Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. So we've been reviewing the necessary economic program for Egypt, and that would be kick out the International Monetary Fund, declare an immediate debt moratorium. You obviously want to build up grain stocks. This is another important thing. Make a deal with Argentina. Make a deal with Ukraine. Make a deal with Russia. Since you can't be relying on the U.S. because of their blackmail, then go to some country that produces large amounts of grain and build up some kind of a reciprocal relation using the things that you have to offer. Reduce your dependence on the United States and the British in any way you possibly can, because that is the way that Egypt is squeezed, and I'm sure it's being squeezed in the background. When Gibbs says we're reviewing our aid posture, that essentially means we're finding ways to cut off grain so that we starve the Egyptians into bread riots. That was what happened in the 1970s, and that the U.S. has been using that ever since. So kick out the IMF, kick out the World Bank, declare an immediate debt moratorium, begin negotiating with your international partners, China, Russia, so forth, for the expansion, widening, and renovation of the Suez Canal, the full Tennessee Valley Authority treatment for the Nile River, the second Nile with full Tennessee Valley Authority treatment on that one, and generally speaking, a program for housing, scientific development, jobs, and infrastructure. They have some rails, as you can see from the news coverage, but those have got to be brought up to date, right? You need a fast rail from Alexandria down to Cairo, down to Luxor, for the sake of the tourists who get an idea of going through the desert that way. So economic ideas. Rather than starting with these maximalist political demands, especially in a place like this where the government has been oppressive, why not start with programmatic organizing so that you realize what it is you're fighting for? Because otherwise, the trajectory of these people is clear, right? These dupes, CIA nihilists in the streets, they're going to be used as pawns. They're going to get Mubarak out. Maybe they can fracture his regime, which is the regime that goes back to Nasser. But then what are they going to get? They're going to get Baradei, a tool of the International Monetary Fund? Well, that's what some of them want, but that's really not what people across the board in Egypt would want. And then after that, what are you going to get? Descent into chaos, followed by a coup d'etat of the Muslim Brotherhood, followed by a very unstable, demagogic, Sunni Muslim, Ikhwan-oriented leader who would then pick a fight with Ahmadinejad, right, to see who is the leading Muslim country, who is the dominating power of the Middle East. Remember, the historic states of the Middle East are only three. Iran is one, Turkey is another, Egypt is the third. The other ones are all recent creation. So it's a kind of a feud between the pharaohs and the Persian emperor in this kind of a case. That would be the CIA scenario. I, of course, reject it. So Baradei the other day said, Mubarak, you're a dead man walking. Doesn't that sound like death threats? Have the pro-Mubarak people been issuing death threats? I don't know, but that's Baradei. So he's a hero of democracy. And as I had occasion to say on the television, if you burn down a bank in Greece, you're a war criminal. But if you burn down the party headquarters and other big office buildings in Cairo, you're a hero of democracy. Isn't that wonderful? Well, that's no good. Now, in terms of the opposition, who are these groups? These are essentially non-existent groups, right? These are websites. These are like, instead of saying they're post office boxes today, we'd say they're simply websites. One of them is called April 6th. Let's take a look at April 6th. What is it? Well, you go to their website, and you find that their logo, their symbols, and their slogans are all taken over directly from Atpor. Atpor, as I have had occasion to say in my Twitter account this week. I put it on Twitter, Webster G. Tarpley at Twitter, Webster G. Tarpley at Twitter. You can see it all there. You can see my track record. It's pretty good. Atpor, with an exclamation point, was the original matrix of the color revolutions. This was created by the CIA, by the Albert Einstein Institute, by the National Endowment for Democracy, and so forth, International Republican Institute in Serbia, in Belgrade. And this was done after the U.S. got finished bombing Serbia in 1999, they immediately they switched from the hardline sort of direct military intervention to the softer line, which is then the color revolution. But these are imperialist tools in any case. So you go to the Atpor website, then you go over to the April 6th website in Egypt, and you'll see that they have the same fist that was used as the symbol, the slogan, the logo for the overthrow of Milosevic back in 2000. And then, of course, he was dragged off. He was kidnapped, really, and taken to The Hague, where he then died in 2007. But this April 6th is obviously a cheap knockoff, right? It's like one of these cheap Rolexes that you'd buy, in a side street. The April 6th is simply Atpor, and the CIA is now so cheap, right? Who knows what they use the money for? They won't even give them money to develop some new graphic arts, a new slogan, some kind of new stuff that they can show on the website. And then you look at what is their program? Well, the program is that they hate Mubarak. This is not enough for a big country of the size of Egypt. So again, we're left with the CIA playing the mob rule card, the card of ochlocracy. And you can listen, if you had occasion to listen to CNN or Al Jazeera, especially in the course of this past week. We're told, well, Mubarak made a speech and he said that he won't be a candidate for re-election, but that's not enough for the young demonstrators here, these wonderful paragons of democratic virtue that are assembled here, these selfless judges of Staatsräson, of raison d'etat here in Egypt. They've decided that's not enough. He's got to resign. He's got to leave the country even. And these people even have their own prison. There's a subway entrance in the middle of that square, which is where they go. They've been using it as a public convenience, right? They've been using it as a restroom in the middle of that square. But it's also a place. It's a people's prison, as the Red Brigades would have said. It's a prison where they've kept pro-Mubarak people that they've captured, and they've got them in this hellhole, right? This black hole of Calcutta. This is now the black hole of Cairo. And they've got them there, and you'd say, well, by what right? Isn't that kidnapping? Isn't that also a crime? Well, of course, no, because it's all in the name of democracy, and the people that are victimized are all pro-Mubarak. So don't worry about them. The notion of mob rule, I think, is very unpalatable to any middle class and even any others. Interesting, National Public Radio this morning had a guy saying he's in Cairo, and he talked to the guy who collects garbage. And remember, the garbage is a whole segment of the population that live in and among and from the garbage. So he asked the garbage man, what do you think? And he says, well, I don't really like Mubarak that much, but I find that the demonstrators are now very unreasonable, right? Their demands are escalating. Their demands are unreasonable. We shouldn't have to, please them. They can't dictate. Mubarak said he's leaving. They're going to change the Constitution. What more do you want? And there is something to this, right? But naturally, the young nihilists, well, what they want is maximum chaos, and that fits. It coincides exactly with the program of the U.S. Government. Now, what people in Saudi Arabia or Jordan or other places see with this, I don't know. The big problem with the Shah was he could never understand what the U.S. was doing to him. I don't think he ever understood what had been done to him. But maybe after Egypt now, they should have known, but maybe they now will be known. They will understand now they've been reminded. Back in a minute on World Crisis Radio.